Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a highly respected Academy Award-winning writer, director, and producer whose body of work includes some of the greatest films in recent times. After studying acting in New York, he created the Actors Gym, which operates in New York and Los Angeles and provides a forum for developing new works for stage, film, and television. He's written and directed over 30 plays, and in 1998, he directed Colin Quinn in An Irish Wake on Broadway. He's created, written, and produced many highly acclaimed, award-winning TV series, including Millenium, Easy Streets, Falconey, The Black Donnellys, and 100 Code. On the big screen, he co-wrote and produced the blockbuster movie Crash, which earned him and co-writer and director Paul Haggis an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. He also executive produced the 2008 TV series Crash, inspired by the movie. In 2004, he co-produced the Academy Award-winning movie $1 Million Baby, followed by writing and directing 10th and Wolf, and another one of my favorites, Bent. He wrote and has just completed directing his brand new film Lamborghini, starring Frank Grillo, Mira Sorvino, and Gabriel Byrne, which tells the story of legendary Italian automobile designer Ferruccio Lamborghini. In addition to his Academy Award, he's won 19 other awards for his work, including a BAFTA Award, a London Critics Circle Film Award, a Film Independent Spirit Award, a Broadcast Film Critics Association Award, a Writers Guild of America Award, and the Pioneer in Screenwriting Award at the Burbank International Film Festival. I'm delighted and honored to welcome Bobby Moresco to our show. Bobby, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. All that makes me sound like I'm very old.
And very accomplished.
Thank you. I'm happy to talk to you, Harvey.
Bobby, I know that you started out as an actor. You studied acting with Win Handman and Peggy Fury, and you appeared in TV shows like Miami Vice and Law and Order. I'm sure that having been an actor makes you a better director, but does it make you a better writer?
I think so. And I'm willing to bet that writers who were actors, most would agree with me. I think that our training as actors allows us to stay in the moment more than maybe most writers might do that. And of course, acting is all about staying in the moment and seeing what comes next by virtue of what happens now. So I think that helps writers, having been an actor. And of course, it also helps if you're going to move from writing into directing to know the language of the actor. If you're going to direct and you don't know the language of the actor, it's a big problem.
What I really love about your career, Bobby, is that you came to an understanding after about 10 years as an actor that you weren't going to have the success you were looking for. And you loved the business so much that you reinvented yourself as a writer and then as a director and producer so you could be part of the business. There's a lesson in there about how to achieve success in an industry that you love, don't you think?
I think so. I can only speak for myself, but coming into the realization that I was never going to make a good enough living to support my wife and two daughters, I was faced with the question of what do I do now? I love this business. I love the idea of storytelling anywhere I can find it, anywhere I can contribute to it. And so it was either leave the business and go do something else, there were opportunities. My family works in construction back home in New York. I could have done that and some other things, or to just figure out a way to stay in the business. If nobody was going to hire me, figure out a way to create the work for myself. I chose the latter. I'm really happy I did. It took a long time, more than most, but it worked out for me. Look, if you love this business and it's the only thing that's in your life that is what you want to spend time doing aside from your family situation, then you find a way to do it. You know, if you don't love it, and it's the only thing that you can do and make you happy, if there's something else that does that makes you happy, go do that, because this is really too hard. That's really what I was faced with. And there was nothing else I could do that would make me happy. And so I opened up my theater company at night and I attended bar to support my family. And then I just figured that would be my life for the rest of my life. I'd be just doing, theater, writing and directing, or acting in theater and working as a bartender. That would have been fine with me. I'm glad it worked out otherwise, but that's what I accepted.
Now, if memory serves me correctly, you never went past grade 9 in school. So, how in the world did you educate yourself to become such a gifted and well rounded writer?
Well, it's a good question, I guess. It came from the need to write, and it began with acting. You know, if you're going to take on the job of the actor, then you've got to read. You've got to read everything. So I had already started doing that, having left the ninth grade, as you say. And so when I decided I wanted to be a writer, I was smart enough to know I better learn something about writing. So I spent, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years only reading the great poets, the great writers, the great playwrights, philosophy. And I just tried to understand how good writers write well. And so that took me a long time. And instead of a 4-year education, it was more like a 7 or 8 year education. And it continues to this day. So it was all about reading. It was all about reading.
Did you do what I did, where you have a dictionary right beside you?
Always, I'm talking about 1977. I bought the complete works of Shakespeare, especially the sonnets. I began with the sonnets before the plays. And I'd come home from work at 2 or 3 in the morning. My wife would be asleep, and I'd take the first sonnet out, and I'd read the first line, and I had no idea what it was. So I'd look up 2 or 3 words, and I'd get that line and move on to the second line and look that up. And then eventually I'd know what the line meant. And then I'd know what the next line went. And then I'd know what a stanza meant, where the playwright was going, where the writer was going. And then at some point, I came upon what Walt Whitman says in Leaves of Grass. Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Well, I did. I felt proud. And the prouder I felt getting at the meaning of poems, the more I read. And that education during that time, and honestly, I've never stopped it. I continue to read constantly on the work, on the great writers. I'm reading, I had never read Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, so I'm reading that now. It's just all about reading. An education is nice. You spend more time with other people. There are smart people that you can meet in university. It's often that I miss that because I might have been able to move a little quicker. I didn't start supporting my family in this business until my 23rd or 24th year in the business, so it took me a while.
Did you have any role models in the industry or people that inspired you?
Well, every filmmaker in the 1950s and 60s, 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. I mean, long before I started reading about writing, I was a big movie fan. So I think I knew every movie that was ever made from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then in the 60s and 70s, of course, was a whole new world. But younger, from age 7 or 8 until I went on my own at 18, so 11 years, I watched movies every day and every night. So Elia Kazan is one of the big favorites. I love John Ford. I love all the noir films. So those are my models. And then after I started writing and looking at directing, Kazan became the guy that I just loved more than anyone. And then later on, it was Scorsese and Spielberg to a certain extent. I mean, a lot of people may have a problem with Spielberg, but boy, he does what he does better than anybody else has ever done. And I've learned a lot from watching Spielberg, especially Jaws. So I have more models and people to learn from that I could mention.
What's the best career advice you ever got?
The best career advice I ever got was from an owner of a bar where I had just gotten a job as a bartender. And one night I had an audition and I left early without cleaning the bar well. And I come back the next day and the owner said to me, "You want to be an actor, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What makes you think you can be a bad bartender and then somehow you're going to be a good actor?"
Wow.
If you want to be a good actor, you better be a good bartender too. You better be good at everything you do. And I thought, oh my God, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. And of course he was right. And I never left the bar not clean again. And I took that lesson into my work as a writer, actor, and director. Whatever you do, you can't just be a wonderful actor and a shitty person or a shitty bartender. Whatever else you do, he made me understand that whatever you do, you've got to take it on. You got to try to do it well. Doesn't matter if you do it well. You got to try. You got to give everything who you are. Wherever you leave your footsteps, it has to be something that was well done, or at least sought after well done.
That is such good advice. I've tried to live that way my whole life. I love hearing you say that. Now, when you're directing a film that you've also written, Does Bobby Moresco, the director, ever get into a conflict with Bobby Moresco, the writer?
No, Bobby Moresco, the director, fixes everything that Bobby Moresco, the writer, screwed up. That's the truth. Once you start looking at it from a director's point of view and realize you've got to make this work on the screen, not just on the page. And then you rewrite, you fix it, you make it better.
So of all the plays and TV scripts and movies you've written, is it fair to say that the Black Donnellys would be the most autobiographical?
To a certain extent. I'm working on another film at the moment that goes deeper into that world of my life growing up in the world of the Black Donnellys that we're hoping to shoot next year. So yes, until next year.
Okay, I can live with that because next year I'm going to invite you back.
There you go.
I want to ask you about your work with Colin Quinn. You directed him on Broadway in An Irish Wake. And then in 2019, you directed him in a comedy special called Red State, Blue State. What draws you to his particular brand of comedy?
He did. I was living in Studio City in 1999. Colin had a show on the air called Remote Control. I had never met him before. And I did have my theater company back then. It was starting to get a little bit of acclaim. People said, oh, there's good work going on in this place, the Actors Gym. So Colin had heard about it, and he showed up at my door. He just knocked on my door out of nowhere. And I opened up the door, and he said, how you doing? I'm Colin Quinn. I've got a play I want you to direct. I said, okay. He said, I have a videotape, and I also have a script. What do you want, the script or the videotape? I said, I'd rather read the script. He said, yeah, videotapes are too noisy. Videotapes are too noisy. That's my introduction to Colin Quinn. And I read the play and I loved it. I love what Colin was after. It was a play I understood. And so the Irish Arts in New York agreed to produce the play with me directing and Colin starring. We did maybe a 6-week run at the Irish Wake, which everybody loved. During that time, Colin got the job on Saturday Night Live, and Lorne Michaels came to see the play and wanted to take it to Broadway. And so we left the Irish Arts and moved to Broadway, and that's my introduction to Colin. And I'm very happy I've done it because I love Colin with all my heart, like a brother.
I love him too. So Bobby, of course I have to ask you about Crash, which says some pretty important things about the ways we judge each other based on race and socioeconomic class. You grew up in New York, which is so incredibly diverse and multicultural and very different from the way people live in LA, where you can be quite sheltered and isolated, especially if you're affluent. How much of your New York sensibility were you able to inject into Crash?
I think a good amount. I mean, the conversation early on, Paul had the idea. He had created some characters and a situation that he wanted to write a movie. He asked me to come aboard. He showed me those pages. And I remember one of the first things I said to Paul was, and we didn't have a title called Crash yet. I said to Paul was, everybody thinks that New York's more racist than other cities like Los Angeles that are more left-leaning, as it were. But I think they're wrong. He said, you grew up in New York where I did. You meet every nationality, Black, Hispanic, Indian, you choose it. They're in New York, and you run into them in the elevators in apartment building you live in the stores, in the subways, on the buses. You can't help but get along. It's impossible not to get along unless you want to fight every day of your life. That's how I viewed New York. And I had lots of mostly Puerto Rican friends because there were Puerto Ricans on the West Side, but I had Black friends as well, and Irish and Italian. So we had to get along, and we had to fight. And at some point you get tired of fighting. So that was my first contribution. And Paul said, yeah, in Los Angeles, we live in our houses, we get in our car in our driveway, we drive to work, we drive back, and we back into our house, and we don't run into people unless we crash into them. And that was the genesis, I think, of the title Crash. And so that was my initial contribution. And I think I kind of stayed on that bent for a while. Paul and I did everything else together.
And I think I read correctly that you and Paul Haggis wrote the script for Crash in 2 weeks. Is that right?
Well, we spent a lot of time on the story. I mean, we wrote the first draft in 10 days, but we had spent months and months reading books on the different ethnicities that we thought belonged in the movie, on the culture, on the history of those ethnicities, on where they might live in Los Angeles. We did a lot of talking to our friends who were either African American or Hispanic or Persian, as it were, as they say in the movie, as we say in the movie, as opposed to Iran. And from those experiences, we just filled ourselves up with the characters and the story until one day Paul said to me, you want to write the first scene, which we don't normally do. Normally we outline the movie long before we write the first scene. But Paul said, let's write the first scene. We had done so much work on research. And then we never stopped. 10 days later, we had the first draft.
It's just incredible.
But in fairness, when we did a reading at the Actors Gym with the wonderful actors at the Actors Gym who gave great feedback. And then we did another rewrite for 3 or 4 days. So the second draft took maybe 3 days.
Now, Bobby, you've said repeatedly that you do not see Crash as being about racism. You see it as being about finding out who we really are when something happens that puts everything at risk and it forces us to make a crucial decision. So then what were you and Paul Haggis saying to us about human nature?
I don't think we were saying anything to anyone. I think we were asking questions about ourselves and trying to answer those questions on the page. I think when you start saying things to people, you're in the wrong business. You know, I think we writers are better served to ask questions and try to deliver some sort of message or lesson. I don't know how to do that. I'm sure there are writers out there like maybe Tennessee Williams, maybe Arthur Miller more than Williams, you know, who deliver a message. I only know how to find out what it is we think we're writing about and explore that. The palette was always race. We knew that. That wasn't what the movie was about. All of us, and listen, we live in a divided world today, right? In America, you know, it's 49% here, 49.5% there, and there's a half percentage somewhere in the middle trying to figure things out. Each and every person on either the far left or the far right, when faced with finding out what they really believe, will only get the answer when they are faced with losing everything. And then you find out who you are. And if you look at the movie Crash, each and every one of those characters are faced with losing everything. And at the moment they realize I either do this or I do that when I'm losing everything, at that point, not only do they find out who they are, they take an action that will deliver that for the rest of the movie or their lives if we went on. That makes sense?
Oh, totally. And that's why the movie works, because we have to answer the question ourselves. When we put ourselves in the position of all of those characters. I know it took you a long time to cast the movie. At one point, you had Heath Ledger and John Cusack and Eva Mendes and Forrest Whitaker. Why did it take so long to get the cast in place?
Well, it's an old Hollywood story. When you have an independent film, which we were, you get financed by virtue of the stars that you have in your movie, because the financiers will go out and they'll sell the movie internationally with those stars attached. We never got to the point, even with all those actors that you named, where we could get the financier to say, okay, here's a green light, here's the $6.5 million you need to shoot the movie. We never got there with, and all those actors are wonderful actors. You would think that any one of them would have gotten there, but we didn't. And so we get those actors to agree to a certain date. And then a financier kept, no, we need one more name. And then those actors would then lose the dates when we were going to shoot, and they'd take another job, as they should. And then we have to start all over. And even with all those actors that was in that movie, until we got the final piece of the puzzle, with all the actors already there, and I won't tell you who that actor is, but we needed one last actor, and then we got the $6.5 million green light. But that's the, listen, I understand that, it's the world we live in. Financiers want to make sure they have a chance of getting their money back. And the way they have the best chance to get their money back in the independent world is to be able to sell their film foreign and guarantee a certain amount of money back. Maybe they'll take a chance on $1 million if they've got 5 million in pre-sales. They're not going to take a chance on 6 million for the most part.
I think it's an amazing tribute to the script that the actors agreed to appear in Crash for very little money, don't you think?
They all agreed to work in Crash for the same amount of money. It's called Favored Nations. Each and every one of them. And half of them came to Los Angeles to rehearse on their own dime because we had no money to bring actors in. I mean, Sandy Bullock, God bless her, was busy. She was shooting another movie. And what I remember, she flew herself in a couple of days early to rehearse. But all the actors, they were so gracious, they wanted to make this movie work.
I remember being surprised when the reviews for Crash came out that they were very political reviews about whether or not racism still existed in America, rather than critiquing the film. Did that surprise you and Paul?
Surprised the hell out of us. I wonder how they feel now. Do they feel now that racism is still behind us? The opening line of one of the most well-known papers in America was, "The writers of Crash think nothing has changed in Los Angeles since the Rodney King incident." Really? He was so sure that Los Angeles was the new world. I wonder how he feels now.
Yeah, me too. Does it surprise you or even disappoint you that Crash is as relevant now and maybe even more relevant now than it was 18 years ago when the movie came out?
Disappoints me. Not that we thought Crash would make a difference. We just needed to write and make that movie because it was important to us. I don't think either one of us ever thought that we'd make a difference in the world. We just hoped to write something that was important that maybe somebody would get. We never, ever talked about winning any kind of award. It never entered our minds. So all the accolades later on were the biggest surprise. Does it surprise me that it didn't change the world? No. Changing the world requires a lot more than just one movie.
Well, I've seen interviews with you, Bobby, where you've said that you've sometimes felt like an imposter or inadequate, or that you're not really as good as people say you are. So, Bobby, when you won the Academy Award for Crash, did you finally feel like you really are talented and worthy of the accolades that you've received?
Well, there's a couple of questions in there. Talented and worthy are two different things. When you spend your whole life chasing something like I did, 25 years of my life chasing the ability to support. And the only thing I ever chased, I never chased awards. I chased this. I chased, let me just make enough money to do what I love to support my family. That was my dream. Had nothing to do with a lot of money, had nothing to do with awards. So I will tell you this. When people would ask me what I did for a living before I won the Oscar, I had a hard time saying writer, director, filmmaker. I just hadn't done enough. I didn't feel like I earned that title. After I won the Academy Award, then I would say without hesitation, I'm a writer. I felt like that gave me a certain validation by virtue of the work done. Do I feel worthy? I don't know. There's so many other people out there who haven't got as lucky as I have, or maybe haven't worked as long and as hard as I have. But there are people out there who are really worthy, and they're not where I am. They're not as lucky as I am. So I feel grateful for having done the work. But do I feel worthy? I don't know. I feel like I've done the work. If that make me worthy, I'll let other people decide.
Well, winning an Oscar is great, but it doesn't make you a better writer. So after you won the Oscar, did you feel enormous pressure to try to top yourself or to make lightning strike twice?
That's the biggest thing that you have to be careful of in the beginning. And plus, they start paying you a lot more money than they ever paid you before. So you start feeling really guilty if you don't deliver something great. You think they hired an Oscar-winning writer, they want an Oscar-winning script. The last thing you can do. Because the quickest path to writing something badly is trying to write it well. What we do is write, okay? We write something that's important to us, and then we rewrite it, and we try to make it better, and then we rewrite and try to make it better. But if you're trying to write something well in the first draft before you have a chance to really find out what your movie's about, you're dead. It's the quickest way to being totally in the dark and say, what do I do next? Nobody sits down and says, I need to write a great script. You know what Hemingway says? He says what you need to say, each and every writer. He says, I want to write one true line. And once I've written one true line, let me write another true line. That's where our head's at.
Now, it's very well known that so many movies like Crash and Million Dollar Baby are turned down by almost everyone in the industry before finally, sometimes after many years, the film gets greenlit. Why is it that so many powerful people in Hollywood who are supposed to have some expertise in identifying good scripts, why are they so notorious for turning down what ends up to be a blockbuster hit?
Who told you they're supposed to know what they're doing?
I would have thought.
Nobody knows anything in Hollywood. William Goldman said that first in a book called Adventures in the Screen Trade. The one thing you have to know is nobody knows anything. The minute you start thinking about somebody, listen, if anybody knew anything, that person would have hit after hit every time. There's no studio, there's no producer, there's nobody who gets hit after hit. It's always a crapshoot. And I think that people, for the most part, in positions of responsibility, that means money, in Hollywood, if they don't greenlight a movie, no matter how much they love it, there's no danger. There's no danger. I'm not on the spot to say, hey, give this guy $6.5 million, it's screwed. Okay, I lost you $6.5 million, boss. I'm sorry, you're fired. They're all afraid to get fired. I understand that. You're putting your job on the line the minute you give somebody a green light. So it's easier, it's a lot easier to say no. And for the most part, with both of those movies, every single person, every single executive, every single studio who read it said, incredible script. Nobody wants to see a movie about a female boxer who dies. So they talked themselves into believing nobody wanted to see that movie. And maybe they believe that, because let's face it, you go in a room and say, listen, I'm going to write this movie about this great female boxer. She's a real champion, only she gets paralyzed in the end, and then her best friend has to kill her. That's the pitch for $1 Million Baby. Who's going to make that movie, right? So we had to write the movie on spec because nobody would make it. And then when we wrote it, and it turned out to be what people say was a great script, everybody still said, great script, nobody wants to see a movie about a female boxer who died. And so with Crash, which we wrote second, after people turned down $1 Million Baby for all that time, we said, well, I guess we need another movie. Nobody's going to make this movie. We wrote Crash, and the same thing happened. People said, great script, great characters. Nobody wants to see a movie about race relations in America. Okay. So that's what they told us, and I understand it. They want to protect their jobs, and they want to protect their business, and they want to make sure they can get a certain amount of money back. Everything changed when we got the actors. When Don Cheadle came aboard, we certainly had, at that point, a legitimacy that we didn't have before. And actors read the script because Don was involved. And the more actors that read the script, not caring about the money because they're artists, they just kept coming aboard, and they kept coming aboard until we made the movie. And then when Clint Eastwood came aboard, the same thing happened. Oh, now Clint's involved. Now we'll make the movie because Clint will get you the money. They don't want to put their money at risk for the most part.
Yeah, well, what you're saying is that show business is 10% show and 90% business.
1% show, 99% business.
Now, one of my favorite Bobby Moresco.
By the way, I don't want to disillusion people out there. That's the nature of what we're up against. You can't blame these people. Their job is to make money. Their job is not to make a great movie. Their job is to make money. I don't hold it against them. The really good ones, though, know how to make money and know how to make a good movie. Those are the ones you want to work with. And there are good ones out there. The first one that comes to mind is Al Ruddy. The second one is my friend Mark Johnson. These guys who know how to make great movies, but also, know how to make money as well.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of my favorite Bobby Moresco movies is Bent, which is a really great murder suspense thriller with Carl Urban and Andy Garcia. But the real surprise in this movie was Sofia Vergara. In my opinion, this is the movie that proves that she can really act beyond the stereotypical role she played on TV in Modern Family. How did you get such an amazing performance out of her?
Well, first of all, she came to play. She had never done a movie like that. She came out, we had dinner one night, and she said, I don't know what I'm doing in this movie, so you have to take me there, right? I said, yes, I will be there every step of the way. And then she backed it up. She came ready to go. She worked incredibly hard. I mean, I had her, just about naked in a cold shower at midnight. She never complained. I had her stuffed into the backseat of a car where it was freezing, never complained. How I got a performance out of her is because she wanted to deliver one. She trusted me and she trusted the work, and she went to work. She didn't play any star games, She didn't ask for, she had one assistant, no baloney, and she came to work. That's how it happened.
It's just a great movie, and she gives a great performance. Now, I know you've just come back from Italy, where you recently finished filming your brand new movie, Lamborghini, based on Ferruccio Lamborghini's son's biography, correct?
Yes, it was based in part on the book, yes.
Can you tell us anything about it?
Sure. Ferruccio Lamborghini was a farmer's son in a long lineage of farmers. Italy was an agricultural nation, had been for a while. When Ferruccio came home from World War II, the experience of having been in the war and been a prisoner of war and having seen people die changed him. He wanted to do something different with his life. He wanted to create something with the name of Lamborghini, in his words, that it would live forever. He told his father what he wanted to do. His father thought he was crazy, but he said the first thing he was going to do was going to make a tractor that would make the lives of every farmer in Italy and maybe the world better, meaning a tractor that could be afforded by everyone. Father said he was crazy, and he went about doing that. And he did it, and he made his mark. And the whole world learned about the Lamborghini tractor and how every farmer can do that. But he also came of age in a time when Italy itself moved from the agricultural world to the industrial world. And he started making all kinds of other things. And eventually he loved the Ferrari cars. But he felt there was something wrong with the Ferrari cars. He felt the clutches weren't up to what they should have been. And he felt his clutch in his tractors were literally better than the Ferrari. So he went to talk to, I don't want to give away the story, but that led to a meeting with Ferrari, and that led to Ferruccio deciding to make the first Lamborghini.
When do you expect Lamborghini to be released?
Mid-October.
I can't wait. You know, I think you've made at least 2 movies in Italy, and I know your family is from Genoa. You've won a number of awards in Italy, and I believe you're an honorary chairman of the Los Angeles Italia Film Festival. Yes. Tell me about the special relationship you have with Italy from a professional point of view as a filmmaker.
Well, from a professional point of view, listen, I don't think there's any filmmaker in the world who doesn't love what happened with movies in Italy in the 1950s, the neorealism, the Sica, all those guys. So I already had that relationship going out there. My friend Pascal, who had founded and runs the film festivals in Ischia, in Capri, and in Hollywood, introduced me to the man who runs Yevellino Entertainment, and Andrea Yevellino, which is Yevellino Bacardi, used to be Ambi. And Andrea came to me by way of an introduction through Pascal, and Andrea said, "I'd like you to make a movie about Lamborghini." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'm trying to make a movie now called Bent. If you'll make Bent first, I'll make Lamborghini." And he said, "Great." And he did it. He made Bent, and then we made Lamborghini. So the special relationship started in watching the movies of the 1950s, neorealism, Rossellini, Fellini, everybody. And then going out there, my father was Italian, my grandfather was Italian. I understood right away that these are people who I know, and I can work with these people. And I wound up loving them. I love the country, I love the people, I love the crews. There's nothing I don't love about Italy. And we're negotiating right now for my 3rd movie next year in Italy.
Well, I read that one of your next projects is Charlie Lucky Luciano.
That's what we're negotiating. That's correct.
It's about Lucky Luciano's role in helping the Allies in World War II, correct?
Well, it's more about his entire life. That was a part of his life that came later, but that wasn't his whole life.
I can't wait to see that.
Everybody, it's really funny. When we were doing a little bit of a press tour, talking about a couple of different things, everybody kept bringing up Lucky Luciano. So many people want to see that movie. So that's exciting.
Well, you've written about the Mafia more than once. You wrote about Captain Joseph Petrosino, the famous policeman who tried to take on the Mafia. And now you're writing about Lucky Luciano. What is it about the Mafia that people find so fascinating?
That's not hard to figure out. The same reason people find Donald Trump fascinating. They see these people, I'm serious, they see these people who are louses, really, who are not good people, really, but they don't care what the status quo is. They break all the rules, they break all the boundaries, they become the outlaws that in their bottom of their gut, everybody else wants to be. None of us want to live with the constraining things that we have to deal with in society every day. We got to get up a certain time. We got to get to the subway a certain time. We got to pay the bills a certain time. And these people, these other people, these gangsters, forgive me, but I don't want to get into political here, but I put Donald Trump in their basket. People can hate me for that. But Donald Trump also breaks all the rules. No matter how much you dislike the guy or no matter how much you like him, he breaks all the rules. That's what people love about these gangsters. And almost always, they pay a price. They get away with it for a while, but they pay a terrible price almost always. And I do think that Lucky paid a terrible price. I think Donald Trump is on his way to paying a terrible price. And again, I don't want to get into political stuff here. And I'm sorry for people out there. If you like Donald Trump, I don't hold it against you. I understand. He's speaking to people's grievances. He's speaking to people who really are hurting, who can't pay the rent, who can't take care of their children. And they blame these politicians. And Donald Trump come out and said, hey, yeah, blame the politicians. Never pointed to the fact that he'd owned the politicians forever. So people believe him because people need help. So I don't blame the people, but I do blame him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I want to ask you, when you look back at when you were a young man, working as a bartender, doing anything you could to be part of the entertainment business, and looking at the trajectory of your career so far, are there lessons about the choices you made that could help other young people out there who are aspiring to make it in show business?
Well, that's a great question. I think the first lesson I've already said. If this business, writing, directing, acting, producing, is the only thing that makes you happy, then do it. Don't give up. It took me 25 years to be able to just support my family. I knew it was my life. And don't wait. You know, when I started writing and directing in my theater company in 1978, the Actors Gym, where I wrote all those plays you spoke about and started writing screenplays, I refused to sit around and wait for somebody to give me a job. As I said a little while ago, I said, to hell with it. If I really love acting, if I really love writing, I'm not going to wait for somebody to give me that job. I'm going to create it myself. And that's where the Actors Gym came. And by the way, 40 years later, the Actors Gym is still in existence, doing the same thing, exploring the work. So my biggest advice would be, number one, if this is the only thing that makes you happy, stick with it. But be honest with yourself. If you don't love it enough, if when you turn 60 or 65 and you haven't gotten as lucky as I've gotten, if you're going to hate yourself, if you're going to look at yourself as a loser, then don't do it. You don't really love it. You're looking for something else. You're looking for success, something other than writing, directing, and doing this as your life. So don't do it. Don't throw your life away. If there's something else you can do that makes you happy, go do that. That's my first bit of advice. My second bit of advice is don't give up. If you really love it, find a way to do it. You know, I've got a cell phone here. I can go make a movie with that cell phone. Back when I was younger, I would borrow $2,000 from a friend or a construction worker or my friend Frankie Schumann, who's a cop and happened to have some money, and I'd go produce one-act plays or a full-length play. And I could do a whole play and run for 4 weeks with $2,000, because back then the theater owners would take the rent for the first couple of weeks for rehearsals. Then when you opened up, they agreed you could pay along the way. Now you can't rent a theater without paying everything up front. So you can't do that anymore. But in movies, you can. You can pick up your phone. You can find other people who love movies. So my advice is, number one, if you love it enough, don't give up. And number two, don't wait for somebody to give you a job. That is hell. That's a purgatory you'll never get out of.
You mentioned success. Bobby, how do you define success in your life?
I define success very clearly as chasing a dream that I could support myself at what I love, and that happened. When I started making a living and supported my family, I was a success as far as I was concerned. The rest didn't matter. The Oscars, all that other stuff, none of that matters. How many people can wake up every day of their life and make a living at what they love? I mean, when I'm at work, if I'm directing a movie, I get angry when 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock comes and I got to go home. We're done, son of a bitch. I want to do one more scene. I never did that in construction. I didn't do a tending bar, you know. So find out what you love and then find out a way to make money at it.
Well, Bobby, I know how busy you are. I've been so looking forward to this opportunity to interview you. I want to thank our mutual friend, Leslie Ann Warren, for putting me in touch with you. I want to thank you so much, Bobby, for taking the time to come on our show.
I hope it helps, and I hope people have fun listening. All the best, Harvey. Good talking to you. Thanks for the good questions.
Our guest has been extraordinarily talented writer, director, and producer Bobby Moresco. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thanks to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Bye-bye, Harvey. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.